Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Chris Legaspi, and today we are going to continue with the Skills That Pay the Bills series. This is episode 6, and we're going to focus on value composition, value design. It's all the same thing, tonal composition. Basically, the ability to design, compose, and arrange shapes of value and tones really, really important into making beautiful pictures, and it's an integral part of composition. In the previous episode, we talked about composition as well, but that was more about what I call linear design, just arranging lines, shapes, and various patterns and things. Now we're actually going to combine line and shape, what we talked about last episode, with value. We're now going to assign values to our shapes. And before we begin, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to my free Insiders Club. Insiders Club members get first access to these weekly live streams, and you also get access to other live events, and you get discounts on courses and programs, along with access to free lessons and other free content available only to subscribers. So all you have to do is go to www.drawwithchris.com, and there you can enter your email and you'll be good to go. So I really appreciate you being here. We're going to start with a warm-up exercise. We're going to do what I call the 2x1x3 value composition exercise. So we're going to just do some sketching to warm up. Then we're going to do some value studies with environments. We're going to start with the 2-value study, then a 3-value study. Then we're going to do some tonal composition studies. And then we're going to do some movie stills, film and movie screen captures. And before we begin, comment below. Let me know, where are you located? Where are you watching from? What time is it for you? I'm currently in Thailand at the moment. It's 9 in the morning for me. So thank you for being here wherever you are. We're going to begin with our first warm-up exercise. I call this the 2x1x3. So last week we did a 2x1 exercise, which was design-based. We took two shapes. We made a design, a little composition thumbnail. The rules were you can only use 3 geometric shapes, but 2 of them have to be the same. So they can be 2 squares or 2 rectangles and 1 circle, or they can be 2 triangles and 1 rectangle, and so on. Because the 3 basic shapes that we use are squares, rectangles, or circles and ovals, and then triangles. 2 of the shapes must be the same. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take a similar idea, and then we're going to assign a value. So of the 2 shapes, we're going to assign 3 values, and the 3 values we're going to use, we're going to limit to 3 values: a dark, a light, and a midtone. So here's just a quick example of that. And this one also combines the edge, as you can see on the right, like making some little blurry in focus, but we're not going to focus too much on that today. We're just going to just do some sketching and warm up. Okay, if you're watching at home, you can follow along with me. So I'm just going to sketch 3 shapes. 2 must be the same. So the 2x1 exercise, I'm going to sketch the line part first. And again, triangle, squares, and rectangles are the 3 shapes that we have: circles and ovals. 3 basic shapes, geometric shapes. Okay, so let's just see. How about I'm just going to sketch and try not to talk so much. Last time I did this, it took so long because I was trying to talk and compose at the same time. It's not the easiest thing to do. So 2 circles and a triangle. Just really abstract and fun here. Nothing serious. If you're kind of new to this geometric shape sketching, definitely follow along, review the previous lesson, and you can see more examples of that. To play with the scale as much as possible. Let's see, the simple, kind of like that triangle design. Let's see what that can do. Oh, that's a strong one. It's dramatic. Let's play with a couple more boxes. And forgive me, I'm not talking too much here. Just again, it's just a lot easier if I'm. These things that take thought. It's obviously I'm trying to teach as well, but so two shapes, really, two shapes. Just pick any two squares, two circles, two rectangles, and then find a way to create a nice balance, a nice composition with the third. It's a totally a brain exercise. Design is a lot of thinking. It's very mental. The mechanical side, the actual physical drawing side of it is quite easy. We can all draw these shapes. It's the thinking side that takes time, the arranging of things. Okay, so just as the quick set, nothing serious. Now I'm going to try to fill my little sketches with some tone, and I can only use 3 tones. So I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I'm drawing on tone paper, so this one makes it easier because the mid-tone is already established, right? We got our 3 basic shapes. Now we need our 3 values. The 3 values we need are dark, mid-tone, which is the mid-tone of the paper in this case, and the light, obviously. Light, middle, dark. They don't have to be pure black, pure white, and pure midtone. They could be any key, right? Relatively dark, relatively bright, relatively midtone. So the goal here is to play with various variations and have fun. I'm going to start with this lower left one. I like this one a lot. Let's see what that looks like. Well, I'm going to first think, okay, what should be dark? What should be light? What should be midtone? How about the background is a nice, is fairly dark. So we have this kind of curvy thing around it. So he's kind of got this light behind him, and then that makes the background light. Let's try that. And if you don't have tone paper, obviously if you're using just plain paper, which I also do, there's nothing wrong with that. That means your paper will be the white, and you have to add dark and midtone, which is fine. Don't let that stop you. Okay, I like that. Let's try the next one. Let's see. I'm just gonna pick one that looks interesting first and see how that goes. Okay, I like this one up here in the upper right. I'm gonna surround them by dark. So if this was a poster, this would obviously be like the two faces. It's a very common poster design. Gonna put the beam of light behind him. So this would be like a nice floating head with a little light shape behind him. Actually, a gradient would be nice here too. I should probably do that. And then obviously if your characters are, you know, got faces and you can put their interesting shadow shapes and things like that. Makes it fun. And that nice chiaroscuro lighting. Yeah, that one definitely needs some gradients, but just keep going for the sake of this demo here. Okay, this one right here, let's try that. And if you're doing this exercise, you can even do a set of line drawings, right? Do a set of line drawings and, pick the one that you like. This one will have a nice cast shadow. Pick the one that is interesting to you. I'm going to use a gradient because I can do that. So instead of just flat shape, you can apply your tone in a gradient, which creates more sophistication. And again, if this is a figure, you'll also have some kind of gradient. And we could put a gradient in the shadow. Oh, it just adds a little bit more interest and flavor. But that's really the whole point of this exercise, just to warm up, get your brain working, thinking about shape and also tone, because tone is a whole other element. You can take the same one and apply many, many different tonal arrangements to it. That's also very good practice. So let's move on to the next exercise here, just for the sake of time. Exercise number 2 is the two-value study. We're going to look at some environments. These photographs I got from Instagram and things, and I tried to get, as like both everyday shots that people will see every day, most people that they can see in their daily lives, like urban landscapes, natural landscapes, and things like that, cityscapes. But I also tried to pick ones that were interesting. So what we're going to do is we're going to take an environment, something from your daily life, either your own photograph, or I absolutely do these from life in my sketchbook all the time. We're going to turn it into a two-value sketch. So this here, what you're seeing on screen here, I made this in the computer using Photoshop filter, but just kind of to simulate what we're after. We're going to take a full value environment and turn it into a two-value study. Okay, I have a nice environment here. Yeah, I'm going to start by making my frame, try to match the aspect ratio as best as I can. I'm probably going to do a terrible job. I typically do these really small so I can see the whole image in one look, but in this case, for this class, I'm using the computer, obviously, and it's kind of full screen at the moment. It looks a little strange. Okay, so sketch the shapes. And again, if you're brand new to this, I have many videos, a couple videos on this channel about this. You can review the previous lesson on this exercise, the line design, the line drawing part in the last video. We also have how to draw with shapes, how to see shapes in environments. I also have that one's very good. You can review that. But essentially, I am just analyzing shape first. Really, not so much the value. I mean, we will get to that. But right now, I'm just kind of analyzing and trying to get the shapes down. Obviously, the shape of the hill, the shape of the house, the shape of the trees and the bushes, So I'm just trying to kind of do a nice line drawing here as best as I can. Doesn't have to be perfect, but what's important, what's the compositional side is the arrangement. So, in this case, this is obviously a very skilled photographer took this photo. So his arrangement is already very good. The photographer spent time to compose the picture already for us, for me in this case. So if you're drawing your own environment, which again I recommend, powerful, powerful exercise. Now you don't need too many details. You just kind of need the placement, right? How much sky we see relative to how much tree we see, and kind of get close to the angle. That's really important, obviously. The trees and things, they don't have to be perfect. There's a margin for error. It's not like I'm drawing a portrait. They don't have to be the perfect size and scale and placement. So what I can do is now I can start to look at the value a little bit. I could see what you want to do is you want to squint and see, what values group together. And that's the whole point of this. We want to group as much as possible, the darks and the lights. Because really all I'm looking for is one light and one dark, and I'll show you what that means. Okay, next we want to fill in our dark value. And really, we only have two. We have a dark, which in this case is black. So when I do this with a black marker. And then the white or the light will be the value of my paper. In this case, it's a light tone, but it's still lighter than pure black. So let's go. Let's fill in the dark. So I'm just going to start at some things that are obvious, like this roof, right? The roof is clearly a dark shape, and the shadow, the roof and the shadow of it, clearly a dark shape. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw that in and fill that in with my marker here, my digital marker in this case. But I absolutely love this exercise. I'd like to start doing these streams with traditional materials again. It's a lot of fun, but it's like 10 times more difficult to set up. But anyway, the roof line, the little shape of that little chimney, the side of the house in shadow. So this is a lot of fun. And this two value exercise will force you or train your eye to group values and design the shape, because sometimes when you group a value, the shape, kind of doesn't make sense. Like right now, the side of the house, right? All of this got grouped, so we lost a lot of that detail that makes sense. But that's okay. We can make it up in other ways by, in this case, framing the roof a little bit with some shadow. Okay, back to the house. Underneath the looks like a second story balcony there, a little terrace or balcony. There's some cast shadows happening there, really pretty. And this photo looks like it was taken during either sunrise or sunset, the golden hour, which is absolutely the best time to be outside and do any kind of landscape painting. I personally love studying environments when the sun is bright and it's kind of low. So not so much 12 o'clock is nice, like high noon when the sun is above. That works too, but also after 12, like after 2, because once the sun starts to set, it creates these more dramatic shadow patterns. Really pretty for me, anyway. I do like that. So I got the little house. You know, we'll test if it's reading as a house. The goal of this exercise is to see if you can get some kind of compositional read. You can still kind of recognize what it is in your composition just on the value shapes. Right now, the line is helping us. The outline that I drew, a little line sketch. The front, you guys see these bricks right here on the left on our reference image here? Look how dark the bricks are. So now I'm debating, should I group the bricks with the dark or not? Let's try it. I'll kind of meet in between and just dabble. Because if I make it totally black, right, group it with the dark, then I will lose the front plane of it. And I kind of need the front plane of it because I blasted out the side plane, remember? Right, all the side plane of the house is all grouped in shadow. Okay, that's nice. Let's do a quick test. I'm going to turn off the drawing and test to see if my shapes read. Okay, just a quick test to see if the shapes read. I would argue it does, right? We see something. We see a roof and this dark shape on the side. So it could be like a big truck or something. Definitely the roof reads really nicely. I'm happy with that. You can almost make out the windows and things. I can keep going with a little bit more detail, but This is just a quick test, and you should do this as well for yourself when you're doing the exercise. So let's get back to the rest of the study here. Okay, so now the trees. Obviously, the trees are generally dark, and they also have some shadow. So that's a bit tricky, but with practice and study, you can study masters to see if they group trees, if they group shadows, if they, you know, turn down the contrast of trees and things like that. Because right now the trees have really nice contrast. This big mass behind the big tree line in the upper left, clearly very, very dark. I'm going to group it with the dark. And then you're maybe thinking, oh, Chris, some of the trees aren't as dark as that, but they're not as bright as the paper. What do you do? They're kind of in between. So those are the halftones. So that's where you have to come in and design, okay, should I group halftones with lights or should I group halftone with shadow? That's the question, and that's really up to you. There's no right or wrong way to do this. The truth, like Steve Houston likes to say, if it rings true, if it reads, if it communicates, that's how you know you made a good decision. So no right or wrong. Should you group the halftones with lights? Yes. Should you group the halftones with darks? Yes. So try both, you know. If you have a halftone and you're like this tree, for example, this tree on the upper right I'm about to do, there's clearly a dark tree on the right and a mid-tone tree in the middle. Should I group the mid-tone tree? I would argue no, but you can. The mid-tone tree has some shadow shape on this. Should I group the shadow with the light? That's a good question. Let's find out. Or should I group it with shadow? Let's see. In this case, I'm going to group it with shadow and see what happens. I'm just going to try it. I could make the read less clear, make the read more clear. I don't know. This is why we do this. We practice, 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 practice. And yeah, for me, this is one of those kind of life-changing things for me. You know, when I first saw this, it was Steve Houston who introduced me to this idea of tonal composition. And when I first started practicing them and studying it and doing it on my own, it totally changed the way I think about the world, how I see. And it definitely made me a better composer, picture maker. And that's what we all want. I'm sure all of you watching this are, you know, want to do better portrait commissions, want to do comics, maybe you want to do movie posters like me, or you want to be a concept artist. Man, I wish I did this when I was a concept artist for video games for many years. This kind of thing kind of came a little bit later in my games career. I wasn't doing it before I got hired, so okay, so this is my interpretation. There's some darker trees that I chose to group with the lights. There's some lighter parts of the tree that I chose to group as shadow. So that's totally my interpretation. Now let's test to see the read. I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm going to ground this house with the environment a little bit with that little fence line. That does help a lot. See how it just kind of grounds everything? And then I'm going to put that little shape on the lower right corner. I don't know if you guys can see that. That totally grounds the composition. It adds beautiful counterbalance. And the photographer who took this knew exactly what he was doing. So that's a counterbalance idea. Maybe we'll talk more about that in future lessons. Comment below if you want a full composition course or program or series. Let me know. if you're interested in that. I love talking about it. Okay, let's take a test. I'm going to take out the line drawing and see if my tonal study looks good. Okay, I also darkened the background here, but I took out the line drawing to see if my shapes read. This is the test. This is the proof in the pudding if you made good decisions. And I would argue I did. I mean, I really like just including those bit of foreground elements to really ground this house. The trees look like trees. Trees are quite easy, and it's really, you know, I could have taken more time to make them look more like trees or whatever. But yeah, they read like big group of trees or something organic behind there. But I would argue this was a success. So this is something, and you should also practice multiple different environments and different keys, right? This is what's called a full key. It has darks, it has lights, it has midtones. So practice mostly dark images like nighttime, mostly bright blown out images. Practice urban scenes as well, obviously, and interiors. This exercise you can draw along as well. This will be our 3-value study. So we're going to do the same kind of idea. First, do a line sketch to, make sure our shapes look good and that we kind of describe the environment that we're drawing, that we're trying to study, compose a good composition with shapes. And then we're going to add tones. But in this case, we have 3 tones. We have a dark and a light, just like last time, but now we have a mid-tone to play with. So this is going to be a lot of fun. And you could draw along with me as well. This example is what I see in my mind's eye, and it's kind of what we're going to be after in the drawing right here. Dark, middle, and light, and lots of beautiful little shapes to play with. I like to begin by creating a frame, kind of match the aspect ratio of what I'm drawing. If I'm drawing from the natural world, let's say I'm outside and sketching this scene, which I would absolutely do. This is a gorgeous scene and beautiful lighting. I would definitely sketch this scene if I was there in person. And this is something you could do as well. Make my frame a little bit thicker here just for fun. And another thing I like about design sketches is that you can do them anywhere, really. Design sketches are something you can do anywhere composition studies. Of course, if you're watching this, I know you bring your sketchbook everywhere you go, right? You're putting in your hours, you're getting that mileage, so you always got your sketchbook with you. So this is just a great thing to practice and draw and sketch and play with and have fun. So the first step obviously is the shapes. I'm just going to sketch these shapes. Got this big building in the foreground, little light pole. And I'm going to do my best to kind of get everything in. This is a bit complex, but I chose this because this is an everyday scene. We all have urban scenes. Maybe you're watching this. You have a background like this right now in your backyard or in your neighborhood. Something similar to this that you can sketch and play with. Or if you have a natural scene, you can you know play with more trees and obviously those kind of things, just like we did in the last one. It's quite complex. So this whole area is quite darks and shadow. Here's a tree or a bush or a plant or something. It's in light, but it's also quite dark. It's local color, local value. The green, it's green. It's already quite dark. Little hanging plants. Those would be nice to call out. I can already tell I'm going to call those out. Be really nice to see. I'm kind of planning ahead my strategy because when I look at something this complex, got a lot to play with. And because I have so much to play with, I can take some liberties, meaning I'll show you when we get to that stage, but I could consciously make things brighter if I want, consciously group things with lights if I want, consciously group things with the mid-tone if I want, and dark as well. If I want to lose something in the darks, I can do that. Little cast shadow, that's interesting. So right now I'm thinking, okay, should I group this cast shadow? I don't know. Maybe, maybe. Or should I leave it mid-tone? If I group it, I'll lose some of the ground detail, but I may not mind. This pole, is it mid-tone? Is it light? The pole has a shadow. This little stop sign kind of pole is pretty bright white, but it's in shadow, right? Already thinking ahead. How am I going to handle that? What's my strategy going to be? A little bit of little bit of perspective drawing. Oh no. Comment below if you struggle with perspective drawing or you don't like it. It's never been my thing, but something I had to do for work. It's a good skill to have anyway. It's very necessary if you're going to be working in games, that's for sure. Well, my drawing is not perfect. That's okay. Kind of captures some of the things that I wanted to capture. Just the overall major shapes of the things and the chaos. This part does, admittedly, does take a lot of skill. But again, you can review my how to see shapes series so you can see what I'm looking for. Looking for areas of contrast, straight. In this case, right now, looking for clear and useful perspective lines. These converging lines will help me to describe the perspective, which I do need in this case. Even though it's not something I enjoy, we still got to get it right. That little manholes. Lots of manholes, huh? It's interesting. It's in Japan. Yeah, this photo is from Japan. Oh, there's a break in the cast shadow. I think I'm going to play with that. And lots of detail here, but it's all dark and some bricks and things. I'm not going to mess with that. Small details, not going to worry about that. Okay, and some light poles. That's kind of helpful. These are kind of helpful. They kind of ground your composition. If you're doing an urban scene, these are nice to put in little power lines and things. They're a nice read when you see these kind of long shapes with curvy, thin lines. The audience will assume it's electrical power lines of some sort, or vines. Could be vines too. Okay, there's my line drawing. Now I'm going to add my tones. Okay, this is a 3-value study. So just like last time, I have a dark and a light, except this time I obviously have the third value, which will be the mid-tone. In this case, I have a drawing on tone paper, which I do recommend. It's the easiest way to do this exercise. It's the fastest, most efficient, because obviously the paper is automatically in mid-tone. But if not, you can totally do it on white paper. I do it all the time. Now I'm just going to block in the darkest dark first. I have my mid-tone established. What I normally do is then I block in dark darks, my black basically, and then block in the lights and then take it from there and adjust from there. So I'm going to block in what's obviously dark. So this underplane of the roof, this just starting here. I might just choosing a spot in my drawing and just kind of going to work because I need value shapes now so I can make decisions on what to do next. So I'm grouping the roof. In this case, I'm going to group the roof or most of this building with mid-tone. I think that would be a good strategy. And kind of call out light shapes next, which we'll do next. This little sign is interesting. I do love these little urban scenes because there's such a powerful mental exercise on grouping and simplification, right? You're so forced because if you're to sit here and try to draw every shape and detail and every plant leaf and every brick, you know what I mean? A would take forever and B would not look as good because you would lose the bold graphic clarity. Simple graphic things read the strongest. They have the most emotional impact. This sign is interesting. I'm going to group this sign. I'm not going to add text, obviously, but yeah, sign is. Oh, I can do it at the end. Little odd little shapes in the fence. Little brick at the bottom. You have some bushes and these little house plants, but they're partially in shadow and partially in light. Light is coming from the right, obviously. Man, such a beautiful photo. And also, too, what I like about this exercise, it makes you appreciate your everyday surroundings. You know, it kind of makes you appreciate the beauty that you have all around you. I don't know where you live, but and obviously some locations are more beautiful than others. Obviously, I realize that. Let's see. But yeah, I'm sure the people who live, you know, for example, in this little urban neighborhood, you know, they probably have seen this every day for 10, 20, 30 years, you know, so they probably don't appreciate it as much as we do right now, those of us who are maybe new, you know, maybe Those of us never been to Japan or an Asian country or a foreign country, for us it's kind of magical in a way, or unique. But yeah, when even in your own environment, if this was your neighborhood, doing these shape studies and tonal studies will help you to see the beauty in your environment. And I got a feeling really short on time right now. Remember those little plants right here? Right here? You see they're in shadow and they're really quite dark relative to something that's bright like this thing. That's white. I'm going to add white there. But you see how I called them out and they look really nice. I kind of add some nice flavor to what we're doing here. Some interest. Call out this pole. You know what I'm going to do? This tree is casting a shadow. I'm going to group this cast shadow with the darks because that looks like a fun shape and it's at an angle. You see that? The cast shadow of this bush onto the fence. I just decided to group it with dark. Why not? Just looks really cool in my opinion. And it's an angle. Look at that. I just love angle, so it's a nice excuse to that angle. Okay. The pole. Only the pole shadow side will get grouped in this case. And that's my decision. You could totally make a different decision. And I could also change it. See later. I can change it later. See if it reads better. Now there's the question. Should I group? Yeah, I was gonna, all of this cast shadow area at the bottom here, I was questioning, should I group it with light or midtone, leave it midtone, or group it with shadow? And I am going to group it with shadow. Let's see if I can just pick out some shapes to make it seem more like an abstract cast shadow. So I'm going to lose the door there of that little building, and I'm going to lose some of this interesting detail, but I could bring some of it back. The little manholes are quite interesting. I could even do this. Say, you know what? I'm going to call out that manhole. Why not? Consciously leaving that manhole open, grouping it with midtones so that I can call it out in my design. I think it's really interesting. And then all of these little shapes, whole combination of light shapes here, dark shapes, midtone here. Super busy and complex. So I gotta do my best to group and simplify to get the read that I'm after, which is urban environment with some perspective at the scale that I want, right? I need to know, be able to communicate scale as well. I think I'm doing that. I'm successful so far. Scale and basic perspective is there. Oh, so it's quite complex, taking a lot longer than I thought. Always trying to keep these classes tight and efficient, but I know Every week I say that, but they always end up going really long. You know what? I don't agree with that. I'm going to undo that. Okay, I just undid that dark shape because that building with the P has a nice cast shadow side, but I don't think it's dark enough to be justified because the light is going to be bright. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to make the sky white in a moment. You'll see what I mean here. Yeah, right now I can feel my design muscles stretching. Like looking at all this busyness, I'm like, oh boy, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? So this is such a powerful exercise. And really, I never went to graphic design school. You know, I did take a few composition classes, one with Marshall Vandroff. He's great. But the majority of my design just came from this. I understood the concept and the value of tonal composition and basic shape arrangement. And then I just went out into the world and just did this in my natural world everywhere I went. Also studied the masters, which we're going to look at as well. I don't know if we can do it in this video, but probably not. And I'm going to bring out this manhole and call out this manhole. Just going to add some random speckles of dirt just to ground things a little bit. They don't feel grounded enough here. Maybe add a couple lines just to show that we have a street here, a sidewalk of some kind. Okay, let's see. All right, I feel pretty good about that. What I'm going to do now is add the light. Adding the light now, and I'm using a kind of an airbrush. Here, I would do this, typically when I do this in my sketchbook, I use a colored pencil. So I'm able to add a little bit of gradation. It's not that important. What's important is that we separate light and dark shapes from the midtone and so on. See, so now I can use my white colored pencil and just pick out. That's all I'm doing here, picking out light shapes. The building, remember I saved the building. The sky, again, the sky is quite bright. So it's reading really nicely now. Using some of the lights as little detail accents, just to further refine my read. Make sure the shapes read like what they are. Let's see some of these plants. A little bit in the foliage. It's not the best brush for this, but it's going to work. These little balcony here has some light shapes that I can call out. even this thing, this little cone. They have a cone, a white cone, and just calling out the manholes just for fun. Gives them a little bit of value so they pop out. And that's really about it. At this stage, I'd like to zoom out, but I'm not going to in this case for the sake of this video. But I would look at it from a distance. Again, typically I do these really small, so it's easy to see what they look like from a distance. Oh, there's a nice cast shadow. See how that cast shadow feels, or that little light ray feels like a light ray. Oh, there's a little plant here. A couple of these plants catching some light rays, and the sign. Not going to put all the letters, but okay. So that's just a real quick study. Let's quickly test myself to see if the values read. I'm going to eliminate the line drawing. Okay. Here's just a quick test to see how the read. I think it reads pretty well. Obviously, the sky looks a little strange. It's mostly because of the edge choices. Right. If I were to just clean this up, it would make more sense. But I wanted to see, because ideally a gradient would be great right there. Typically, I would make gradient tones. This one feels pretty good. Okay, there. The sharp edges make it feel more like architecture now. Before it was kind of mushy. I don't know if you guys could notice that. It's because I used airbrush to get that kind of gradient effect, but I lost the draftsmanship of it. But as you can see, the read is there. We got buildings, we got an alley, we got light, and we got shadow. And this is exactly how you start to build your tonal composition muscles. So our next exercise, we're going to do tonal composition study based on movie stills, screen captures. There are many, many great movies to choose from. And the reason why these are important is why they're useful is that the cinematographers, photographers, production designers, people who work on movies are incredible artists, they're incredible designers, they're incredible composers, they're great photographers, they're great at lighting, they're great at costume. So, there's a whole team of very, very skilled artists that work on these movies. And, some movies have more skilled artists than others, obviously. So they're great, great, great to learn composition from and value design. And just like the environment study, we're going to use 3 values and try our best to match the shape design and the value design of the movie still. And today we're going to look at The Godfather. Excellent, excellent cinematography, lighting, photography. And we're going to do this movie still here. And this below is just something I did with a Photoshop filter, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're after. We're going to turn a full color movie frame into a black and white tonal study. So see what we can learn. Start with the frame. Try to match the aspect ratio as best as I can. I think I'm already doing a terrible job. Okay, step 1 is to get the drawing. In this case, we have some nice figures. Comment below if you have seen this movie or you enjoy mobster movies. or you've seen the whole series. It's a wonderful movie. I haven't seen it since I was a kid, but absolutely gorgeous composition, photography, cinematography, beautiful lighting, costume, just wonderful, wonderful artistry all around. That's why such a great exercise to practice. And something's already wrong with my frame. Not quite sure what it is. I think the character is just a little big. So I'm going to try my best to do a good head drawing, but really I don't care. I'm looking mostly at the shapes, shadow shapes really. And I'm sure I have a video on that as well. You can review for that. And there are so many good movies to choose from. So many good cinematographers. Roger Deakins is one of the more famous cinematographer examples I can think of. He's always got good photography. I also like, I just discovered Nicholas Winding Refn, which we looked at in the last episode. I can't think of his name right now, but the director who did Blade Runner 2049 comes to mind, French director. So although there are many great movies to choose from, you got to be a little bit careful which you choose to study. You know, some will have better design than others, obviously. Little too far apart here. Not quite sure what's going on. I'm doing this right now. I'm doing this in Photoshop, obviously, and my screen is on full screen. You know, for the sake of this video, I want to make a nice big image for the video, and it's just much more difficult to make discerning shape composition decisions, design decisions when it's so big. Typically, I do these really small, so I'm always kind of zoomed out. That's what I'm trying to say. So you want to zoom out as best as possible, and I'm not going to do that for the sake of this little lesson here, but definitely can at home. But again, I typically do these on in my sketchbook with paper, tone paper and marker is my favorite, and I use colored pencil for the white. And we have just a really nice dark chiaroscuro. Chiaroscuro means from the shadow. So it's like a Rembrandt or Caravaggio or George Delatour, the Dutch artist who drew, painted these candle-lit scenes, absolutely haunting and beautiful. Candle lighting, really dark and dramatic. Okay, there's my line drawing. Now I'm going to add my tone. Okay, I'm gonna add my first pass of tone. I'm gonna just use a marker here, or simulated marker in this case. I just typically, whatever's dark, I just group it with dark, and this one is quite easy. You can clearly see there's not much light. This is like majority dark. You can all see that. Not much light here. It's a nice vignette happening in the middle, a gradient. So I may do that. In fact, I will do that gradient with a softer brush. In fact, I'm going to play with some gradients, this one, just to show you how useful and important, big part of the value design is the gradient. I didn't want to go too much into that on this video. It is part of it here, and hopefully the stream isn't crashing right now. There's a nice dark section. I'm really squinting here because there's some nice things, some nice details in between them in the wall, the stuff that's happening in the wall between them. They can kind of go either way based on either way meaning group with light or dark, or midtone. Like that picture frame, I don't think that's an accident that's there. Director wanted that there to call out the actor's face. Marlon Brando, his iconic role, the Godfather role. Black bow tie. I'm going to consciously call out this flower. The flower is really, really dark on his jacket there, but I'm going to call that out, meaning group it with midtone. And I really should darken my paper as well. Typically, the paper that I draw on is a nice Strathmore tone paper is my favorite. It's kind of the texture that I'm simulating here. I scanned my sketchbook page to get the paper texture. I'm pretty happy with the light and dark shapes. They're reading really strongly. I'm just going to add a pass of gradation. Now, basically just use an airbrush to see if I can add some gradation, like for sure the background needs it. Okay, I'm going to add my gradation. Just basically take a dark and apply it as a gradation, not as a flat tone. So both are necessary. And I'm not rendering. It may look like I'm rendering, although that's a big part of this exercise, big part of this skill. is to make use of well-designed light and dark shapes. So that gradient works out really nicely. And for sure the white, and you'll see when I get there, when I add the light will need sort of this glowy gradient to it. It'll look really, really nice. Which is right here, right next to the main character. I feel pretty good about that. Let's add our light tone now. All right, we got our darks, we got our midtone. Obviously, I lightened the paper. So now I'm going to add my brightest bright, starting with what's obvious, and it's clear as day that this lamp right behind the main character is the primary bright thing, and there's a gradient to it, so that's wonderful. That's all I got to do, really, and that's pretty much it, really, if you think about it. This image is meant to be pretty dark, and I'm just going to kind of go through. I'm going to go above the line drawing, turn down the line drawing a little bit, just so I can better see the shapes, and you can clearly see that, really pretty much done here. I just wanted to put some of that light above the line work so you can see the real clear and pretty use of highlights. So that pretty much wraps up this exercise. I know I'd kind of go through this quickly for the sake of time, for the sake of this video, but I would definitely, do as many as you can, choose various genres, choose movies that you like. Start with Thomas Deakins. He's a very famous award-winning cinematographer. It's always a good one to start. Even the mainstream guys, Lucas, Cameron, all good designers. Guillermo del Toro. Any Guillermo del Toro is excellent. He's an artist himself. James Cameron's also an artist and director.